Hey, everybody, it's Tommy Canale, and welcome to Before the Lights podcast, the show to find out how those in sports, music, and entertainment made their mark. Let's get this one started. Go get your coffee or grab a drink. Tell your family, friends, neighbors, tell a stranger. The show is about to begin. Today, we have a three-time Major League Baseball saves leader. He spent 17 years in the MLB as a pitcher. He's a seven-time All-Star, a Cy Young Award winner, the 1981 MVP, a three-time World Series champion, four-time Rollie's Relief Man of the Year. He's one of few to have his number retired by more than one team. The Hall of Famer, Rollie Fingers. Rollie, how are you today?
Real good, Tom.
Good. I'm glad to have you on the show. This is going to be fun to go back and learn about what it was like in baseball many, many years ago. You,
it was a while.
you were born you were born in Steubenville, Ohio. I want to kick off this. Where did the nickname Rollie come from? Who gave you that? And that stuck forever.
Well, my dad played professional baseball with the Cardinals. Him and Stan Musial were roommates. This was prior to World War II, and but the team that my dad played on, his best friend was the third baseman, and his name was Rolland, and they called him Rollie. And so my dad named me after his third baseman. I don't know what the thing was, but his told me his first name was Rolland, but that's what he called him, Rollie, and that's where the Rollie came from.
And did you learn baseball from your father? Is he the one that taught you and brought you into the game?
Yeah, more or less. We'd always play catch and stuff, but I grew up in a town where there was no little league. I mean, I didn't play any organized baseball until I was I think 11 years old, because of where I lived in. I lived in a small town north of Steubenville, and the population there was all coal miners and steelworkers. That's what my dad did. So we didn't have enough kids in the town where I grew up to even make a baseball team. So we played. There were 6 or 7 of us that played wiffle ball, and I loved wiffle ball. And I liked doing making the ball curve and sink and drop and rise and do all that with a wiffle ball. So that's where I really learned how to throw a baseball, was messing around with a wiffle ball. And then when I moved to California when I was about 11, that's when I got into organized Little League and started playing Little League. But I never played any baseball up until I was 11.
Wiffle ball brings back a lot of childhood memories for me as well. Love that thing. There's some great memories of wiffle ball. Rollie, you guys eventually moved to Rancho Cucamonga, California. Your parents moved there. And I understand that during the transition from moving from Ohio to California, your family would sleep in sleeping bags along the highway en route. How many nights did you guys have to do this?
Well, from Ohio Valley to Southern California, I think it was at least 3 nights. I remember we stopped one place in Arizona, and me and my brother, we slept on the side of this hill, and it was dark, but we laid our sleeping bags out. My dad slept in the front seat of the car. My mom slept in the back seat. We didn't really have any money for hotels or motels or anything. So, but that one particular night, we just started hearing a rumble, and a train came by about 7 or 8 feet from our head. We didn't realize there was a train track up there. It scared the heck out of us.
That's one way to get woken up.
Oh yeah, really. So, but yeah, we slept on the side of the road in sleeping bags, usually, pretty close to the car. And my dad usually found a safe place to do that. So, but we slept, I think, 3 nights on the road until we got to California.
Amazing. And this shows the early struggles of, what your childhood was like and to how you grew up. But you eventually get to Upland High School in Upland, California. Early days in high school, were you always a pitcher, or did you play other positions as well?
Well, I pitched when I was in Little League, and when I was 11 and 12 years old, I pitched. And when I wasn't pitching, I played shortstop. So I was a shortstop. And then I got when I started playing high school ball, I pitched and I played the outfield. So because I could hit, I was a pretty good hitter when I was in high school. And then when I got to my senior year in high school, we had an American Legion team that I was on, and I was playing left field, and I was also pitching. And our team, small, Upland High, it was Upland Post 73 back then, American Legion ball, and our team, we went all the way to the World Series in Little Rock, and we beat Charlotte for the national championship game. And I had pitched the last game to win it, but I also led the nation in hitting in the American Legion that year. So scouts saw me as an outfielder, and they also saw me as a pitcher. So when Kansas City signed me my first year of spring training in 1965, they didn't know really which position to put me at. So they put me at both, and I did okay at both, but I hit over 300 as a hitter, but I also, every time I pitched, I got guys out. So somebody figured out that I was going to be a better pitcher than a hitter. So that's how I ended up pitching.
And there was no draft back then. So the way you ended up in the pros was the scouts saw you at this American Legion, and then you started to get some interest. And I understand the Dodgers offered you $20,000, but your father and you decided that that would not be a place for you to go. And I'll let you explain on why that was not worth taking 20,000, but you accepted 13 to go to the Kansas City Athletics.
Right. Well, at the time, Kansas City was, really a lowercase ball club. They were always finishing in the cellar, last place. And they were more or less a minor league team for the New York Yankees. Everybody that went from Kansas City went to the Yankees. That's where Roger Maris ended up going. But my dad thought that signing with the Dodgers, in fact, I played for a team called the Dodger Rookies that one summer. And it's like a barnstorming team. The Dodgers organization sponsored. And but the Dodgers that year went to the World Series. They won. They had a great pitching staff. They had Koufax. They had Drysdale, Ron Peranowski. I mean, they had a deep pitching staff, and they were going to be around for a while. So my dad thought that if I signed with the Dodgers, I'm going to be buried in the minor leagues. And the Dodgers at the time probably had twice as many teams in the minor leagues as most other organizations. So my dad thought that I could move up through the ranks a little bit quicker if I signed with Kansas City. But the Dodgers did offer me $20,000, and my dad said no. And then Kansas City, Art Lilly, a scout for Kansas City, knocked on our door and wanted to give us, I think it was $10,000. And my dad said no. I said, we'll sign right now for 15. And so Art Lilly got on the phone, and I called whoever he called, and he came back in and said, look, we'll give you 13. And my dad said, okay, that's fine. We'll sign for $13,000. This was on Christmas Eve of 1964. Yeah, this was before the draft. So I got $13,000. I gave my dad $3,000. I bought my mom a sewing machine, which she loved. And I bought a 56 Chevy.
So the 13,000 went quick.
I blew the rest. It didn't take long for me to go through that.
You go to Class A ball in the mid 60s. And Rollie, if you would talk to me, what was minor league baseball back in the 60s, and who were some of your teammates then?
Oh, golly. Well, in Leesburg, Florida, my first year, we had the worst team that I'd ever played for, even worse than my high school team. It was really bad. I mean, I think I was like 7-15 or something like that as a starting pitcher, and I had a 2.9 ERA, so I had a great earned run average, but we could couldn't score any runs, and that was a long season. And then the next year, I went to Modesto in the California League, and that's where some of my teammates were Dave Duncan. Tony La Russa was my second baseman. Joe Rudy was my left fielder. Reggie Jackson was my center fielder. So we had some future stars that were on that team. We ended up winning the league that year. The following year, everybody kind of moved up through the ranks. Reggie was on the team in Birmingham, Alabama in '67, along with Joe Rudy and Dave Duncan. And we just kind of came up through the ranks. That's the way you did it back then.
Yeah.
And then in 1968, at the end of the season, I was pitching in Birmingham, and I I think I was 10-4 or something like that. And they asked me to come up, called me up for the last month of the season with the Oakland A's in '68. And I only pitched in one game. I sat on the bench for 3 weeks, I think, while I was there. Never got into a game, and I finally did. And they threw me in a game in Detroit against the world champion Detroit Tigers that year. And I got knocked around pretty good. The guy gave up like 4 runs and an inning in a third, so it was ugly.
Going back, Rollie, before you got called up in '67, where there's always highs, sometimes there's lows, and unfortunately you had a situation that nobody wants to go through in '67 opening day in the minors. You got hit in the face, broke your cheekbone, your jaw, lost some teeth, had to have your jaw wired shut for 5 weeks. How was it when you finally got back on the mound again, and how long did it take for you to feel comfortable? Or
it was kind of tough. This happened on opening night, and it was the 5th inning, and I threw a breaking ball to a left-hander, well, not really a big guy, and he hit a sinking line drive up the middle, and I threw my arms up in front of me, and it hit me right on my right cheekbone. So it shattered my cheekbone, broke my jaw. It didn't knock me out. I was laying on my face on the mound, and it was painful. But when I bit down, none of my teeth matched up. So I said, so I knew my jaw was broken because it was hit pretty hard. And I spent about 8 or 9 days in the hospital, and I went from, I think I was pitching right around 200 pounds. That was my weight, and I went from 200 down to 168. So I lost quite a bit of weight, just living on liquids more or less for almost 2 months. And when I came back, I had my first start when I came back was against Evansville, and I had to face the same guy that hit me.
Oh, man.
So they threw me right back into the frying pan when they did that. So, but he didn't get any hits. I think I knocked him down on the first pitch just to get even.
That's how it was done back then in those days.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, one thing funny about that was I did a speech in Indiana about, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, and it was like 40 years since that happened. And a guy came up to me. I was sitting at the dais, and the guy came up to me, and he looked at me and said, "You remember that curveball you threw me in Birmingham on opening day?" And I said, "Are you Fred Kovner?" He says, "Yep." And that was the guy who hit me in the head. It was Fred Kovner. He just wanted to come up and say that he was sorry. I said, "Hey, don't worry about it." And I finally got my glove up in front of my face from that time on. So it was really weird to see him.
I'll bet that probably had to be a weird experience for both of you guys after so many years.
Yeah.
In age 21, 1968 through 1976, you're with the Oakland A's. Just to give people some perspective of what is then to what is now, your first year's salary was $5,100. And then the winter of that year in 68, you go to Venezuela to go into the Winter League to get some work, because I'm assuming then back then, Rollie, they didn't have the fall ball and all that stuff that we have nowadays.
Right. Yeah, that's for a lot of ball players that maybe they didn't get enough pitching in during the season, or wanted to get a little more experience, that would go play ball in Venezuela or Puerto Rico or Dominican Republic. So a lot of winter ball down there. You go down there for 2.5 months, and you would make really more money than you did in the U.S. in the 5 months that you were playing in the States. So that was one reason why I went.
How much did that kind of help your career then by going down there?
Well, just getting more experience because of, the ball players in Puerto Rico and Dominican, Venezuela, they were good ball players. A lot of them were playing in the States, but when they would go home after the season would end, they would play winter ball. They were playing baseball 12 months out of the year, really. So there were some pretty good ball players down there. Tom Lasorda, man, he's one of the teams I know. And when I was playing in the Dominican, so but it was good experience. We were playing a lot of ball. I think we played maybe 60, 70 ball games, and then I got home and had maybe a month off, and then go right back to spring training. So it was a good experience. I don't think I would have changed anything. I liked going down there.
In 1972, the handlebar mustache comes in. It's been voted the best in history. It was kind of started as a joke because Reggie Jackson shows up with a mustache, and then your GM starts offering a bonus for other guys to grow one.
Yeah, well, that's more or less what happened. Reggie and Charlie Finley, they weren't getting along too good. I don't know if it was the contract negotiations or what, but Reggie came to spring training with a mustache and kind of a partial beard, and he wouldn't shave it off. And at the time, there was no facial hair in the big leagues. Nobody had any facial hair. It was like taboo. So he wouldn't shave it off. So myself and Catfish Hunter, Daryl Knowles, Bob Black, I think it was 4 or 5 of us pitchers decided, hey, let's grow mustaches. And if we grow mustaches, Dick Williams, who was our manager, would say, okay, boys, time to shave the mustaches off. And then Reggie would have to shave his off. But it didn't work out that way. Somehow Charlie Finley, the owner, found out what was going on, and he sent a memo down to the clubhouse and put it on the bulletin board. Anybody who makes the 25-man roster on opening day and has a mustache will get $300. So that's the only reason why I grew this mustache, was to get $300 out of Charlie Finley. And opening day, Charlie came down in the clubhouse with 30 checks, 25 ball players, 4 coaches, and a manager. Everybody with a mustache got $300. And we just happened to start winning. I mean, and we were growing long hair, and I think we won like 11 out of our first 15 games or something like that. It was crazy. So, and the fans loved the long hair. We had the white shoes, the colorful uniforms, the mustaches, and we started winning, and we decided to keep them. And that was in 1972 when we started it. And so we ended up winning the World Series in 72 against the Reds. We got to keep the mustaches after a World Championship. 73, we do it again. 74, we beat the Dodgers. So after 3 World Championships in a row, it's kind of tough to shave off your mustache. So a lot of the guys kept them.
Yeah, and then you guys end up even have Mustache Day, and then yourself and Catfish Hunter and Ken Holtzman become known as the Mustache Gang.
Yeah. Well, we all had them. I mean, the fans loved it. I mean, we were playing at a ballpark that was, about, 7 or 8 miles from Berkeley. And the kids at Berkeley loved us because, it was, the 60s and the long hair and dancing crazy and having fun. And they were always in the left field or right field bleachers. That's where they usually hung out during Oakland A's games. So they loved us, but we were also winning. We had some good ball players. Yeah,
you did. And what made you then, Rollie, go to the handlebar part to make it turn into handlebar?
Just to be different. Everybody else was just growing a regular mustache. I'm just going to let the ends grow and see what it looks like. And kept getting longer and longer. The guys kind of liked it. I started getting guys out. And so, as long as I'm getting guys out, I'm not going to ball. Ball players, we're the most superstitious animals that ever lived. So, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So I didn't do it, and I just kept it, and I've had it ever since. I came close to shaving it off one time. We were playing a doubleheader against Baltimore, and I came in the first game of a doubleheader with Frank Robinson at the plate and a runner on first, and I had a 1-run lead. The first pitch I threw him, he hit a home run. Came in the second game in the same exact situation with Brooks Robinson up. Through the first pitch, he hit the foul pole for a home run. Got 2 losses in one day on 2 pitches. And I had the razor right there. I was ready to shave it off, but I decided not
to. And still going to this day. Rollie, talk to me about how did the decision come? Was it yours, managers, to take you from being a starter's role and transition you to being a reliever, which at that point in time, really there wasn't a closer?
Well, I was really on my way out of baseball. I was the starting pitcher in 1971. Dick Williams was our manager, first-year manager. And I started out at the beginning of the season, okay, I think I threw a couple of complete games. I threw a shutout in one game, and I hit a home run. So, but then as the season got going on, right around a month into it, I wasn't getting out of the second, third inning. And then I get knocked out, and I'd wait four more days to get knocked out in the second inning again. And I wasn't getting anybody out. And Dick Williams called me into his office in 71, right around the middle of May, I think it was, and said, "You're in the bullpen. We're taking you out of the rotation." And I said, "Okay, well, at least I'm not going to the minors." So I started pitching out of the bullpen, and I was more or less long relief, just doing mop-up games and that sort of thing. And we were playing a game against the Yankees in New York, and we were getting beat like 11-3. And it was early in the game, and all of a sudden it's the eighth inning, and we're ahead 13-11. And I'm the only guy left in the bullpen. He's got to use me or the pitching coach. I mean, that was the way it was. I mean, there was nobody else. So I came in. I pitched two shutout innings against the Yankees that night. I got a save. He brought me in the next night. I pitched another 2 innings, got a save. We went from New York to Boston, and the day after that, I pitched 2 in the third innings, got a save. So he called me into his office, and he says, from now on, in game situations, after the 6th inning, I'm going to go to you. I said, that's fine with me. I was staying in the big league. So that's how I kind of fell into it. I was just at the right place at the right time and did my job.
From 72 to 74, you're pitching between 111 and 126 innings, which was numbers unheard of then. I mean, that just was not around. Really had a great sinking fastball. What was the speed on that, Rollie? What were you throwing that at?
I really don't know. I'm sure I was 93, 94. I don't even think they had jugs gun back then for radar. I know in the 82 or 1981, they had a gun on me in the playoffs, and I was throwing the ball 92 miles an hour then, and that was in 81. So early 70s, I was probably 93, 94. I had a pretty good fastball, but as a closer, velocity is good, but what you really need is control. You better have an idea where you're throwing the ball. If you don't have an idea where you're throwing the ball as a closer, you're not going to do well. You have to be in the area of the glove, where the glove's at to be successful. And I had halfway decent control. That's why I got by.
You guys were part of a three-peat World Series champion, 72, 73, 74. And in 74, you're the World Series MVP. You had 2 saves with 1 win. Was your team at that point in time just really locked in and focused and feeling like, we can probably win this thing whenever we want and we're rolling? How was it and how hard was it to win 3 in a row? Because, you just don't hear that anymore.
No, it was. I think the hardest one was the first one, getting that first one. Us beating Cincinnati in 7 games. I think that was the hardest one. After that, the second one came a little bit easier. We played the Mets, and the Mets had a great pitching staff. They had John Mack and Kuzman, Tom Seaver. So we knew we had our hands full with the Mets, but our pitching stacked up pretty good. We had a great pitching team in those 3 years with the Oakland A's. I mean, I think we had like 4 or 5 20-game winners. Ken Holtzman won 20 games once. Vita Blue won 20 games. I think once. Catfish won 20 games 2 or 3 times in those 3 years. So we always had a great pitching staff, and these guys were completing 45, 50 ball games a year too. I mean, we were solid in pitching, and I think our team ERA one year was like 2.5 for the whole team.
Wow.
It was that good, and that's why we won. We won more or less on pitching. We never really blew out a lot of teams. We always won the 3-2 ball games, the 2-1 ball games, and that was because of our pitching.
They need to do a 30 for 30 on that on those 3 teams.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody needs to get in and start doing a docu-series on that one for sure.
We had some good pitching staffs those years.
Rollie, in 1972, the World Series Game 3, I was cracking up when I was learning about this. You had a fake free pass to Johnny Bench, ended up striking him out. Talk about that.
Well, geez, that was. It was Game 3. I think it was in the. I think we were in the top of the 9th inning, and I had runners that I came into the game. There was runners at first and third, and Johnny Bench was the hitter, and there was 1 out, and I got the count to I think it was 2-2, and I threw a breaking ball in the dirt, and it got a little bit away from Gene Tennis, my catcher. So Bobby Tolan was on first. He went to second, and Joe Morgan was on third. So I have a 3-2 count, and the runners on second and third, and 1 out. So somebody calls time. I'm looking around. looked over Sal Bando, my third baseman. I said, "Who called time?" And she said, "I don't know." I said, "Here comes Dick, though. Dick's coming out of the dugout. Williams, our manager." And so he gets to the mound, and this is where it got really crazy. He's looking at Gene Tennis, my catcher, and he's talking to me. And he's telling me, he's looking at Gene Tennis, and he's saying, "Rollie, I want you to stand up like you're going to do an intentional walk from your stretch, and I want you to pitch to Johnny Bench. I want you to throw a pitch to him on this next pitch." And then he looks at me, and he's talking to Gene Tennis. He says, "Gino, I want you to stand up, hold your glove out like we're going to do an intentional walk. And as soon as Rollie picks up his leg, I want you to jump back down in behind home plate, and we're going to pitch to Bench." And that was it. And before he left, he said, "I want to make sure you throw a slider. I don't want you throwing a fastball, because if we don't trick him, we don't want him hitting the fastball." And then he walked back to the dugout. And so me and Sal Bando were standing there after he walked back. And I looked at Sal. I said, "Did you just hear what I heard?" Yeah, he said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, I hope this works." And so I went to my stretch kind of nonchalant, just like we were going to do an intentional walk. Gene was standing with his arm out with his glove, and Joe Morgan on third base started screaming at Bench. He said, "They're going to pitch to you, John. They're going to pitch to you." And as soon as I heard Morgan yelling, I just picked up my leg, and Gene jumped back down behind home plate. I threw a slider. I could have stood out there with a bucket of baseballs and not thrown a better slider. It was right on the outside corner at the knees, call strike 3. So it worked. We ended up losing the game, but at least that play worked. Bench has always come up to me and said, "That's the most embarrassing moment I've ever had on the field."
How bad?
Well, better you than me. So.
The DH, Rollie, was implemented in 1973 in the American League. And as you talked about just a little bit ago, pitchers back then went the distance a lot. So they're always, at the plate hitting. You talked about it very early on in the podcast about, your hitting success. How was your hitting in the majors?
It wasn't that bad. I think I had 30-something hits. I hit a couple of home runs. I got a base hit in the World Series, but, I didn't really get a whole lot of opportunities. Being a relief pitcher, I might only get, 6 to 8, maybe 10 at-bats a season. So, I struck out a lot, too, because you don't see majors. It's a little different when you're pitching, but you go up to the plate and you're looking at a 90-something mile an hour fastball. It's a little bit different than throwing it.
Yeah.
So it was a little tough, but I had a pretty good idea how to hit. So I got my swings in, but I did get a few hits. I got probably about 30 hits. I think my lifetime batting average is like maybe 180, somewhere in there. I'm not sure, but I did get a few hits.
There you go. June of 76. You were purchased by the Boston Red Sox from Oakland on the 15th, and then 3 days later it was voided and returned. And then there was a situation with the team and the GM, and then you guys got benched, and there was a possible player strike. Talk about that situation.
That was we were playing the Boston Red Sox in Oakland right around mid-June, and I got to the clubhouse, and our clubhouse guys came over to me and says, "Hey, you've just been sold to the Boston Red Sox." And I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, you and Joe, Rudy, both got sold to the Red Sox." So Joe and I had to go into the clubhouse, pick up all of our stuff, and go over to the Boston clubhouse right across the hall into the Red Sox clubhouse. And Vita Blue got to the ballpark, and he found out that he was sold to the Yankees. And so Joe and I are in uniform for 3 days during the Boston series in Oakland, but we didn't play. Joe, I think, was hurt a little bit and couldn't play. And I got up and warmed up a couple of times, but I never got into a ball game. But after the series was over with, Bowie Kuhn, the commissioner of baseball, nixed the deal and said, "Look, you guys go back to your ball club." So Joe and I just picked up all of our stuff out of our locker at the Boston clubhouse, went back over into the Oakland A's clubhouse. And we were over there for 2 weeks. And Charlie Finley thought that Bowie Kuhn really screwed him. And out of $3.5 million, because that's what Yaki of the Red Sox paid for Joe and I, was $1 million each. And I think Steinbrenner gave Charlie $1.5 million for Vida. So Charlie Finley lost $3.5 million. So Charlie Finley thought he was right. Bowie Coons said, no, you can't treat players like that. So for 2 weeks, Joe, myself, and Vita Blue didn't suit up. We were at the ballpark. We went out and worked out prior to the game. Took batting practice, threw on the side. But once the game started, we were in our regular street clothes. We weren't allowed to even be on the bench. Charlie said, you guys aren't going to be on the bench. You're not going to play. So we did that for 2 weeks. And finally, it got to the point where the players were frustrated. I think we lost 6 games in those 2 weeks, where our Joe Rudy is our best hitter. Might have missed 2 or 3 starts, and I didn't pitch 1 game for 2 weeks. And so we lost some ball games that we could have possibly won. And so the players were frustrated. We were frustrated. So we had a team meeting. During the team meeting, Chuck Tanner is our manager then. We all voted that we're not going to play tonight. Minnesota just came into town. We were supposed to play them. I don't know how many people were going to be there, but we all decided we're not going to play the game there. We're going to forfeit the game. Charlie's going to lose the gate, going to lose all the money. We're going to get a loss. And so Chuck Tanner called up Charlie in Chicago and said, hey, Charlie, the boys aren't going to play today. They're walking. They're going out in their cars and getting their cars and going home. And he's screaming that Chuck Tanner, they can't do that. They got to play. Nope, they're not playing, Charlie. That's just the way it is. Sal Mander was our team captain, and he was in the meeting with Chuck Tanner on the phone with Charlie. We're not playing. So Chuck Tanner comes out a few minutes later and reads the lineup card. And he had 2 lineup cards, one with Rudy, one without Rudy. Chuck Tanner said, which one do you want me to read to the team? And so Chuck started reading the lineup in front of the team, and Bert Campaneris leading off, hitting second, Billy North, hitting third, Joe Rudy. As soon as he said Joe Rudy, we all were taking our clothes off, getting ready for the ball game. That's how we got back on the team. Is we had to tell Charlie Finley that we weren't going to play a game. He was going to lose the gate, which would have been thousands of dollars to him. So that's what he buckled in.
And did that affect the rest of the season then? How you guys were?
Well, we finished in second place that year. We got beat by Kansas City, I think, by a game and a half. So the fact that we maybe sat out for 2 weeks and didn't play, we may have won. We may have won that division that year, but who knows what would happen?
Yeah. November 76, you were granted free agency, and then in December you signed with San Diego, and you were with them from 77 to 80. In 80, what I want to jump to, Rollie, is December 8th of 1980, you were traded to St. Louis in a over 10 player deal. But then 4 days later, you're traded to Milwaukee. Were you aware when you first were traded to St. Louis that you might be going to Milwaukee?
Oh no, I had no clue. I'd had problems with the Padre front office in 1980. They had hired Jerry Coleman as the manager, which they should have never done in the first place. It was just a crazy season. And I jumped all over Ballard Smith and Jack McKeon. They didn't know what they were doing. And I told them to trade me. I said, get me out of here. I don't care where you send me. Just trade me. Get me out of here. So that winter, during the winter meetings, the San Diego Padres made a trade with St. Louis to get Terry Kennedy. There was a bunch of players involved. And I think Gene Dennis and myself went to St. Louis. And so I went to St. Louis at the winter meetings. The winter meetings were there that year. And I met Whitey Herzog, and Whitey congratulated me on being a St. Louis Cardinal. I was there for a couple of days. Then flew back to San Diego and picked the newspaper up the next morning. And Fingers and Simmons and Vukovich traded to Milwaukee. And that's how I found out about it. It was in the newspaper. Bruce Sutter had just gotten traded from the Cubs to the Cardinals. So Whitey had Bruce Sutter and myself at the same time, and that just wasn't going to work. So I think Whitey had to figure out some kind of a deal to get rid of one of us. So he decided to make that trade to Milwaukee. That's how I ended up with the Brewers 3 days later. But I didn't find out. No one ever called me. I just found out in the newspaper the next day.
Wow. The way times have changed, man. I tell you, it's crazy.
Oh, yeah, it is.
From 81-85, you're with the Brewers, and in 1981, you're the American League MVP, and you're the Cy Young winner. And that was kind of a split season. Did you have success right away then coming in with Milwaukee?
Yeah, I know. I had a pretty good spring training, and got a lot. I loved going to Milwaukee simply because they had a great offensive team. Everybody knew that they were hitting a lot of home runs, scoring runs. They had some great players: Robin Yount, Paul Molitor, Ben Oglivie, Cecil Cooper, Gorman Thomas. I mean, you didn't want to face that lineup, and so I knew I was going to a good team that were going to score a lot of runs. And first, month and a half of the season, I was pitching good, getting a lot of saves, getting a lot of work. And then we got to they were still in negotiations with the owners, and they cut the season short by 50 days. We had to strike, and so I was pitching great up until that time, and we had that 50-day strike where I stayed in Milwaukee for 50 days. I went out to a high school and I threw to some catchers at high school during the strike. Some players went home. We knew that the players, the owners had gotten 50 days of insurance. So at the end of the 50 days, that's when they said, okay, we couldn't break the union. We started playing again. So there was two halves of the season that year. Whoever finished the first half in first place was in the playoffs. Whoever won the second half would be in the playoffs, and they would have a playoff games. So we ended up losing the first half. The Yankees won, and then in the second half we won, and so we had to play the Yankees in a 5-game playoff to see who went to the American League championship team. And so we got beat by the Yankees in 5. But I had a good year. I came right back after the 50-day layoff. In fact, the first game I pitched in was the All-Star game in Cleveland. I ended up getting a loss. I was so rusty, I had no clue. So Mike Schmidt hit a home run off me, and I ended up getting a loss for that game. But the rest of it, the whole season, I pitched great. I had a great ERA. I think I had like 28 saves. It was a fun year.
Yeah, especially getting the MVP and winning the Cy Young. And then in 82, you experienced some pain from a torn muscle in your right forearm. You saved 29 games battling through this pain and unfortunately missed the World Series, which is to this date Milwaukee's only trip to the World Series. When did you start really feeling that there was some discomfort there?
Well, up until it happened, really, I didn't really feel anything. It was just one of those things. We had just gotten Don Sutton in a trade. We were in first place, and it was a doubleheader that night. We were playing Cleveland. And Don pitched a great ball game. I think I came in the 7th inning with a couple-run lead. And through 3 or 4 pitches, it was fine. And then on one pitch, I felt like a burning sensation in my elbow. And couldn't figure out what it was. It was really painful. And I threw a couple more pitches, and I could hardly get the ball to the plate, so I just called timeout. And I called for Harvey Keene, our manager, to come out to the mound. I told Harvey, I said, look, something's the matter with my elbow here. It's really sore. I don't think I can pitch right now. So they took me out of the game, and the doctor looked at me, and he just said it was like a strained muscle. So he said, just take a couple of weeks off and, not throw. It should be okay. So that's what I did. And at the time they had to fill out the roster for the playoffs. So they had to get your 25-man team. So they kept me on, hoping that I was going to be able to pitch. And I couldn't. 2 weeks later, I threw, I couldn't throw. It got to World Series time. And they still kept me on. And I told them, I said, guys, I can't throw. There's no way I can pitch. I even tried throwing batting practice in St. Louis before the World Series, and I couldn't even throw batting practice. And they should have just taken me off the list and added another guy. But it ended up being a tore muscle, and I had to have it reattached that winter. The next year, I lost all of the '83 season because the team doctor misdiagnosed it, and so I lost all of the '83 season. Went to spring training and couldn't pitch. Finally, they said, well, you're going to have an operation. So I sat all winter long when I could have had something done, and they just waited too long.
Yeah.
So, nothing I could do about it.
No, and then unfortunately in August in '84, you had a herniated disc. after the 85 season, you decide, okay, this is it. I'm going to retire with a 2.9 ERA, 341 saves. It was the most in MLB at that time, along with 1,299 strikeouts. But then after the 85 season, you get an offer from Pete Rose to come play for the Cincinnati Reds. And it really didn't work out because the owner had a clean cut policy. And I'll let you use the quote.
Yeah, I was under contract in 1986 with the Brewers. George Bamberger, the manager, and I just didn't get along. We didn't see eye to eye on anything. And so I had 17 saves in that year, but I had a clause in my contract. My base salary that year was $200,000, I think, and which was really low because I just had a back operation. They didn't know I was going to make the team, so I signed this $200,000 contract. But I had a clause in there that if I didn't make the team and I pitched every game that I got into, if I came in and got one out, I got 20 grand. So no matter what, every game that I came into, I was going to get $20,000. They didn't think I was going to make the team. Well, I made the team as the closer. I pitched in 47 games that year. And at the last month of the season, the team, we were kind of out of it. We weren't going to win. So George Bamberger sat me down. He didn't pitch me for a whole month because he knew that I was going to get $20,000 for every game. So they didn't even use me. I didn't pitch. I think I pitched in one game in the whole month of September. And so I just, I had a blowout with him. And then they said they were going to trade me. So instead of trading me, they just gave me my unconditional release. And so even though I was under contract the following year to play for the Brewers, they didn't even want me to go to spring training. I think that year was collusion. They had the collusion contracts and whatnot. They were trying to weed out all the big name players who were making a lot of money. And so I was one of those. But because I was still under contract, the Cincinnati Reds was interested in me. So I would have had to have played for whatever the amount that I had under contract with the Brewers. So I'm sitting at home and my phone rings and Pete Rose is on. I called up and I said, hello. I said, hello. I said, this is Pete. I said, Pete, who's Pete? He said, it's Pete Rose from Cincinnati. I said, oh, okay, Pete, what's going on? He said, well, I just talked to our coaching staff and our front office, and we think that you could help us out next year in the bullpen. We need a closer. And I said, that's fine. I said, I just got released by the Brewers, so I could really sign with anybody. So he said, I said, great. I'll have our general manager call you up the next day and set up everything. I said, okay, that's fine. I'll see you then. So the next day, the general manager calls me up. I can't remember, Housen, I think his name was. Called me up and said, look, I talked with Pete. We want you to be at spring training in February. We'll look forward to seeing you, but there's just one thing. You have to cut your mustache. I said, what? He said, yeah, we have a no facial hair policy in Cincinnati. Mark Schatz, our owner, says you cannot have any facial hair. I said, what difference does it make whether I have a mustache? As far as my ability as a player. He said, well, that's just the way Marge is. I said, well, let me think about this. So I thought about it. I talked to my wife about it, and my wife said, look, you do whatever you want to do. So I thought about it, and I called up the house the next day, and I said to him, look, I don't think I'm going to do this. I'm not going to shave my mustache off. I said, if I'm Marge Schatz to shave for St. Bernard, and I'll shave my mustache. And I never heard back from the Reds.
So you got your answer.
That's how my career ended.
1992, you're inducted into the National Baseball Hall of Fame. You joined Hoyt Wilhelm as the second reliever inducted. Talk to me about feelings when you got the call that you were going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Well, it doesn't get any better. I was on the ballot in 91, but I wasn't sure. There's really nothing I could go on as far as a relief pitcher getting into the Hall of Fame because there was no really closers in other than Hoyt, and Hoyt was a knuckleball pitcher, and he had gotten in years before I did. So I had no gauge to say, think whether I'm going to get in or not. So in 91, I had some people over at my house. They said, if you get the call, you're going to get it around 5 or 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening. So I just kind of stayed at my house, and the phone never rang. So I missed it by like 30 votes the first time in 1991. So in '92, there was a lot of hype going on that I was going to get in. So I had a restaurant in San Diego called Trophies. So I decided to have a lot of friends come down to Trophies. And I took out the back end of the restaurant just for my friends and family and everything, just in the hopes that I might get a phone call there. So, the Hall, Major League Baseball had called me up and said, "Where are you going to be in case you get in? Where are we going to call you at?" I said, "Well, just call me at my restaurant." So at about 7:00, I got a phone call from Major League Baseball, and guy on the other end said, "I'd like to congratulate you. You've just been voted in the Baseball Hall of Fame. We're going to send you some stuff as far as flying out. You have to fly out tomorrow morning to New York to meet the press." I said, "Perfect." So I said, "Thank you very much." And that was basically it. It's a dream come true. You never think about it when you're a player, getting into the Hall of Fame, because that's something that's so far out of your mind. But when you actually get the call, it's a great feeling.
And does the emotions then set in when you have to do your induction speech and and everything's actually happening in front of you?
Oh yeah, I mean, the induction speech is the hardest thing I think anybody in the world has got to go through. I mean, I think my speech was like 20 minutes long, and I don't talk a whole lot. I don't do a whole lot of speeches, but getting through that one, I mean, it's very emotional for every player. I don't care who you are. You get up there, and then you start talking about your family or your friends, guys on teams that you played with, what it meant, everything like that. I mean, it's a very emotional speech that you have to get through. And it was tough for me, especially when they get to the part where you have to, you talk about your dad, your mom, and all that. But I enjoy going back. I've been back every year since then. And that's one of the things I enjoy, is seeing these other guys, the new guys that are coming in, try and get through their speech. It's a tough deal, but it was a lot of fun. Enjoyed it.
Cooperstown's on my bucket list. I need to get out there and go through that thing one day. So it's definitely something I want to see myself. Or after baseball, or when did you pick up golf?
Well, I played golf since I was 9 years old. We lived next to a golf course, and it was a private club, and I would jump over the fence after school, and I had a couple of clubs that I just go out and hit golf balls on the golf course until I got chased off. And so that's where I first started playing golf. Never played any high school golf, just played with friends more or less. And then when I, started playing ball, especially pitchers in spring training, that's all we did was play golf. There's only so much you can do at workout. In the morning, you do your running, you get your throwing in, and then the rest of the day, if you're not pitching that day, we go out and play golf. So I just picked up the clubs, and that was in the early mid 60s. I started playing a whole lot of golf, and I played it ever since.
Played on the Celebrity Golf Tour for a while. Third was your highest finish. Was that right. Fun? Was that fun just to play on that tour?
Oh yeah, it was fun. I mean, there were some pretty good sized purses. We had $500,000 purses at most of the golf tournaments. I played up at Lake Tahoe. I usually finished in the top 10, 4, 5, 6 different times. And we were playing in Dallas at a golf tournament. I finished third. I had like a 20-foot putt. Finished in third place. I didn't know it at the time, but the putt was worth $28,000, and I made it. If they had told me before I putted it, I would have dropped the club. So, but that was the best finish I really had, was in Dallas. And, we had some nice checks. Rick Rhoden was a great golfer, and he won a whole lot of tournaments on that tour. But the third place was my best finish.
And you still enjoy golf today. We went out to recently here at Reflection Blade Golf Club, and for those folks, go ahead and look that up for me, please. It's located in the heart of beautiful Lake Las Vegas. Go to reflectionbaygolf.com. That's reflectionbaygolf.com. It's a top 100 course that the public can play. It's a Jack Nicklaus signature design. It played host to the Wendy's 3-Tour Challenge from 1998 to 2007. And Rollie can attest, it is a great track.
Yes, it is. I really enjoy. In fact, I just joined the club, and we played about a week or so ago. And beautiful golf course. I loved it. It's got some great holes on it. There's four of them. They're right on the lake too. They're really nice.
Yeah, and you can still play to this day. I can attest to that. Sell that firsthand.
Hey, I had a couple birdies, but it's been a while since I played with the pandemic going on. Some of the golf courses were closed down for a while, but I still go out and hit balls. I mean, I'm 70. I'm 73 right now. I just played up at Boulder the other day and shot my age. So I shot a 73 about a week and a half ago.
Still good.
Okay for an old guy.
I guess you can shoot your age. That's shooting pretty well. Rollie, thanks for your time today, man. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me on.
You got it. Everybody else, make sure you check out our Patreon page for the extra 5, and you'll get the extra 5-minute interview with Rollie as well. To get that, go to patreon.com/beforethelights. For show notes, go to our website, beforethelightspod.com, and you can click on the episode page. Please follow us on Instagram at Before the Lights Podcast. Thanks for listening to Before the Lights. I'm Tommy Canale. Until next time, everybody, a salute, a chin chin.